Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Taking Control of Project and Portfolio Management webinar that we're running today. My name's Derek Strachan. I have been working with CPS and numerous clients for quite a long time in this space. I want to just go through some of the if you like, some of the obvious problems that we come across all the time, some of the things that we see everywhere, and then just some of the a little bit of, well, how do I look at those problems in a hopefully in a structured way, so that I can understand how I can maybe address those problems, what I can do to look at my projects and portfolio in a subtly different way. If you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to pop them into the question section of the webinar. I'll try and pick them up. I'll probably try and pick them up at the end, but if I spot one that's very pertinent to the section we're on, I'll try and pick that up as I go too. Let's just move on. So governance and control over your portfolio is just one of those go-to problems that we get. What we want is we want everything, all projects coming in through a controlled front door. That means that we know that those projects are actually funded, that we know that they're a good project to do. They've taken their place in the portfolio in a sound and sensible way. What we tend to get, though, is stuff appearing all over the place. We tend to get projects will either appear because somebody's already been working on it, or they're spawned out of projects that are already in flight in terms of new forms of development, or even worse, we don't hear about them at all until they're done, or indeed we get business as usual work delivering major change that impacts our portfolio in many ways. That's fine. We get sales guys and business relationship managers all the time saying, I'm just trying to facilitate things, I'm just trying to get things through, I just need to get stuff done, and stuff gets in the way. That's fine, but what's the consequence of that to a portfolio? Well, hopefully we're all familiar with the old sort of curve of capacity versus availability. We often take projects and we often just say, well, yes, we'll do it. We'll get those projects. We'll put those projects in place. We'll start work on them as soon as we can. What that tends to lead to is a portfolio that's spread thin, tends to get people working on lots of things at the same time. It also essentially injects a level of or a lack of control over those projects. As people are working on multiple things, they need time to lift one piece of work and put down another piece of work. It just works through as a very poor way of running projects. And if some of that's not even known, if you've got stuff coming in from sales or BRMs or other staff that's completely unknown to the business, then actually you're running over capacity, or projects are not being delivered at the point that they need to be delivered. So ideally, what we've got a portfolio of work coming in that's structured and controlled. We've got work, business as usual, small changes, projects, product delivery, whatever that might be, coming in a structured fashion. We're accepting that we can't do everything at the same time, and we're looking at that portfolio as almost like a Tetris game, where we're trying to get everything in place so that we're not doing too many things, and the capacity is not being breached too far. So other things that we get all the time, lack of visibility. Portfolios, either because projects are invisible or are not known, we don't see them. We have projects that are not being run as projects, they're just people's pet pieces of work that have been done in different places. We might have no common reporting process or systems to run our projects on. Or indeed, we may have common systems, but we're using hard copy presentations, PDF management reporting systems. A lot of clients I speak to find themselves producing a management pack, a PDF pack if we're lucky, a physical pack if we're not. Just having the massive overhead of producing that over and over again, either in the project management space or in the project offices, reduces turnaround time. The information's out of date as soon as it's printed or produced, and it's manually intensive. It takes a lot of effort. Very large amounts of people we work with get sucked into, I've got to meet this need, I've got to meet this need, I've got to meet this need in terms of reporting, and the whole process breaks down as a manual mad panic on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis. All of this is going to lead to the classic project triangle, but in reverse. Things are going to be late, time's going to be lost, things are not going to be delivered on time, either because resources don't know they're meant to be doing stuff or because they're doing too much stuff. It's going to be over budget because people are going to take longer over things because they're picking up stuff, putting stuff down, doing stuff manually, not even knowing that people are doing those things. And the quality is going to suffer. All of the three key indicators of a project are going to be a problem. How does that manifest? Well, this is just some of the words that I've heard in the last 3 months, 6 months. Yeah. Where did that come from? Who authorized that? Yeah, where's the funding for that? I don't know what that, where that's come from. Key indicator that the governance on the portfolio isn't in tip-top shape. Everyone's busy, but I don't know on what. Everyone tells me they're stressed to the eyeballs, but I haven't got a clue on what. Not having a clear portfolio that you can reference, that you have a clear understanding of, is going to result in confusion at the management level. These are actual quotes from people I've worked with. Project prioritization is just too hard. We just say yes to everything because we can't get our head around which projects are more important than others. Projects are actually quite easy to prioritize. It's the result of the prioritization that's quite hard to manage because there's always going to be winners and losers. We just need to bite that bullet and make sure that it happens effectively. Processes stifle innovation. The right level of governance will not stifle innovation. The right level of governance will ensure that everybody has the right work to do at the right time, that the right projects are being done, and that we get the most innovation or the most business benefit out of our portfolio. Anyone that's saying our processes stifle innovation, it could be that our processes are too heavy. It could be that they're too restrictive. I like to talk in terms of handrails, guidance, instead of handcuffs, limits. But if we've looked at that and don't believe that's the case, that we believe that the processes are appropriate to the level of governance we require, then people may need to be re-educated in the amount of importance of these things. Every project does things in a slightly different way. That absolutely shouldn't happen. We should all be working in a similar way, but there are exceptions. So all projects should be able to deliver effectively in a way that's appropriate to them. That doesn't mean they get to go to the Wild West and deliver in different ways. It means that we have exceptions for key differences between the way things work. The conversation often at the moment is agile versus waterfall, or agile versus project plans, sprints and Kanban boards versus CPM projects. Doesn't matter as long as there's control over the project as a whole, and that everyone knows what the next most important thing is. I'm too busy to follow the process. Kind of is the same thing as our processes stifle innovation. The processes are either too weighty and we need to pare them back, or the process is suitable, but we're either doing too much or we've not got a grasp on what's important. I'm not clear on what the PMO does. This one comes up reasonably often, and it's typically because the PMO is peddling furiously under the covers, trying to get a control on things. They can be seen sometimes as a box ticking exercise. They can be seen as admins that are just doing little bits and pieces around the piece. If a PMO is set up correctly and fits into the governance model that is appropriate to your organization, they become indispensable. And it's often very easy to see how well a PMO is valued depending on where they are in the organization. If they're right down in the depths, working for somebody very low down in the hierarchy, or if they're high up in the hierarchy, you can very quickly see what kind of PMO has been developed. Projects never seem to end, they just go on forever. Maybe it's not a project, maybe it's a product. Maybe we're developing a product and it has a long-term life. Maybe we just don't close projects because we're constantly doing small change and we don't control that change. We just need to have a look at how projects are controlled, and by definition, if it is a project and it is not a product development, all projects have a full stop. They have a start, they have a middle, they have an end. If we can't say that about a piece of work, then we need to decide whether it is or it isn't a project. And then finally, I just can't get a view of the big picture. A lot of organizations get lost in the fuss, whether it's because projects are being run on different processes, non-common frameworks, whether they're being run in isolation or not visible, whether the line between BAU, product development, and projects isn't clear. It all feeds into a lack of visibility either to the projects themselves or to the program and portfolio, and ultimately executive teams that are trying to keep a track on those portfolios. The models that I've shown first and the statements that you see here, these are real statements. I've spoken and worked with people for years, and these statements are common. So if we have those statements, if we're getting a blurry line between, we may have a brilliant a PPM IT solution that's running beautifully, but people aren't using it. We might have a PMO that's running fantastically, but they're drawn into lots of manual reporting. We may have processes that's well defined, that people are finding ways around them and not following the process correctly. All of those things can be true. So what do we do? How do we actually ask ourselves some sensible questions to decide, what kind of maturity have I got in my organization? Well, in terms of how complete is your portfolio, do I have a clear entry point for requests? Is there a single point of entry where I can triage and look at information? Once I've got that, or if I've got that, is there a clear list of projects, live and pipeline, that I can query and look at, that I can see what's coming, that I can see who's in charge? Do they all have ownership? Yeah. Is there relevant information on that list of projects to allow me to manage it? And is it complete? Is it current? Am I looking at a spreadsheet that somebody put together 6 weeks ago and I'm battling valiantly to drag the still relevant information out of it? Yeah. And on that subject, if I have maybe very good systems, or I have a complete list, is it a list that only management teams are using? Are the people that are actually doing the work, the project managers, the teams, the people that are assigned the activities, are those people actually using that information? Or is it just because I've got to feed management, just because I've been told? How organized is my portfolio? So that's how complete is it? How organized is it? Do we have common processes and standards for delivery, even if there can be exceptions and they can move? Yeah. Do we have a common standard? Do we have common key performance indicators for time, cost, quality, delivery mechanisms, priority controls? Do we have all those things in place? If so, does everybody follow it, or are there exceptions? Do we have a person, the Fred Bloggs, who is a constant pain that we can never get to follow the process correctly? Now, it might be that Fred Bloggs, sorry if anyone's called Fred Bloggs, by the way, it may be that Fred Bloggs is completely awful and we need to get rid of Fred. But it could also be that maybe they found a simpler, better, more efficient way of delivering. Is there something we can learn from Fred? Yeah. Or is he just completely off the rails? But don't dismiss the Fred Bloggs. Sometimes they're the people that you can get some information out of. They're certainly the people, the old adage, water runs through the downhill through the easiest path. They're certainly the people you can work out what holes you need to dam up. If you can harness a Fred, then you can work out where those holes are and you can plug them efficiently. How well coordinated is your portfolio? Can projects see each other? Can they see what is being done in different places? Is the portfolio visible? Maybe details, there may be confidential projects that wouldn't be the case for, but for most work, if I know someone's doing something very similar to me or has done something very similar to what I need to do, then having visibility of the portfolio means I can go ask questions, I can gain from others' experience. Yeah. Do they share both physical and resource dependencies? What I mean by that is it may be that I need to do something before someone else can begin their work. That's a physical dependency. They have to wait on me to get something done. By resource, I mean, are we looking at common resource profiles? Are we looking at common resource pools so that we can at least know for the key or critical resources, yeah, whether there is a bottleneck? If we can identify the bottlenecks, we can move things around, we can employ more people if we have to, but we can make best use of those key resources. Are there different routes through the process depending on size and risk? So this is what I alluded to earlier. one process may fit all, but one size does not fit all. You need to be able to cater for the small request and the large project, the product delivery manager, the IT minor change. You need to be able to cater for those. That doesn't mean you need different ways of doing things per se in terms of processes, but it does mean you need to take account of that. And you need to give people the level of governance that's appropriate to them. And do project teams ultimately have a shared forum for communication? You know, even if it's just a Yammer team or something where someone could say, I found this out, I know this, I can do this, someone told me this, did you know that this is happening? Something somewhere where the teams can share their experiences and gain from each other's experience. Ultimately, what we're doing typically, it may be that we're hiring contractors to do work. It may be that we're delivering portfolios of work that actually all the physical work is done by contractors and other people, and that's fine. As long as I understand the dependencies upon me or my organization, as long as I understand the pinch points and where those things are happening, and I have a clean line of responsibility for the delivery of each work package within my project or program from my contractors, then that's absolutely fine. Regardless of whether this is a multi-billion-pound project to deliver kit that, you know, I'm never going to put a spanner on, or whether it's a little piece of IT somewhere that me and my buddy are going to put together, I need to understand the resource demands on me. And even if this is a black box delivery of a fighter plane to the Navy or Air Force, there are still going to be key resource demands on my organization that I need to get a grip on. And if I don't know how much commitment I've got, and particularly if I'm running the project and it's an internal resource project, how am I going to justify or how am I going to guarantee to my management team that I can actually deliver when I say I'm going to deliver? It should take 6 weeks, but what if 6 weeks of that 6 weeks, 3 are taken up by crisis management or holiday or training? You've got to understand the demand at least at a team level or a skill level, depending on what industry you're in, for you to be able to understand the need for those resources. Do I actually even know how many resources I've got? Several clients recently I've gone into and spoken to, and they've not been able to tell me how many people work in a particular role or team. They kind of know, but they don't know how much time's spent doing business as usual or doing product development. How much of time is available to me as a change manager? What are those capacities? Do I actually know what my capacity is? And if I do, can I put the capacity and the demand together to come up with where the bottlenecks are sitting? Yeah. And in the end, do I know which projects are the lowest on my priority list or are the most vulnerable to change, so that I can reschedule the right piece of work or put on hold the right piece of work if I need to? Yeah. Because if I don't know that, there's very little point in managing the capacity, because in the end it'll just end up thin smears across the piece, like we saw in my first model. Finally, how are my projects governed? Can I easily see key performance indicators for all of my projects? Can I easily see what stage projects are in, who owns what project, who the project manager is, but also time, cost, quality? Can I easily see indicators for those? And are they justified? So if I'm heading red on a schedule, can I see an explanation for that? Or do I have to go and talk to people? Yeah, I don't mind going talking to people, but if I've got 50 projects, that's a lot of people to talk to. So how do I get a simple view of how those projects are happening? Can I easily verify that the information is accurate and complete? Tied together with who checks that process is followed. Yeah, is it easy for me to know when someone's lying to me? I'm sorry, strong words. When somebody's bending the truth, when somebody's hiding something, can I see that? And can I do something about it? Do I have a PMO, PFO that can take some of that compliance off me, and actually has the inside knowledge with the project managers and the program managers to know whether or not the right things are being done? And ultimately, that only works if the PMO, PFO is respected and its contribution understood. So is that clear to people? Might be clear to me as a PFO manager or PMO manager or a program manager. Is it clear to the other people that I'm going to be asking these questions of? All right. So there's a whole slew of questions that you can ask. Some of them you'll go, yeah, I'm cool with all that. That's fine. I'm fine. And some of that you're going to go, I'm not massively happy with where I am in that space. What can I do about it? Well, you've ultimately got to take a step back. You've ultimately got to look at what you've got, and you've got to do pros and cons on what you've got. Some things you do will be brilliant. You're in business. You've been delivering business, your business for a while. There are strengths in what you do, and there is a huge tendency in this space to just throw everything out and redo it all because that's the way we do business. You need to review what you've got, and you just need to make the best of the good things and focus on the things that are not so good. So in the questions that we've just gone through, let's try and keep the ones where we're going, I'm happy there. Let's not throw that out with the everything else. So what have I got? What does my front door look like? I'm afraid it's a cliche, but you've got to look at that first and say, have I got a clear line of sight to my requirements from my customers and clients? Have I got a clear line of sight that takes me there? Do I have business relationship managers who I can trust? Do I have sales guys that I can work with? Do I have a pre-sales function that I work with on a daily basis to have that clear line of sight through to my client base? If I've got that, then I'm 7 out of 10 on the way to getting an efficient delivery organization. Being able to contact and visualize what my clients need, being able to bring that into the organization and deal with that is, I'd say, over half of the problem. How do we choose what projects to do? If this is a sales situation, if you're bringing work in from clients, then basically your client wants everything done, preferably yesterday. So how do I choose which projects I prioritize? You've got to work with clients a little bit to sort of explain. If you want a £10 million project tomorrow, you might be a little bit disappointed, but if you are happy to wait till the end of April, June, May, whatever it might be, then we can do something, as long as there's a level of understanding of negotiation. If this is an internal, if you've got an internal organization, internal clients, then you need to work with them for priority. You need to get them to understand their own priorities and their own business imperatives, and you need to translate that into an overall organizational imperative. You can do it with very simple models, very simple priority models. Get them to develop their own local priority matrix, and then bring that together into the larger organization and do a cross-functional priority process. That sounds complicated. It really isn't. A few dozen questions or a dozen questions to pin it down that they agree with, that they develop the questions themselves. You'd be surprised how easily that fits into place. So I get a good view of what's coming down the line. I understand my priorities. How do I know when I can do stuff? Well, until I know my team, until I understand my teams and understand how many of what I've got and how good they are in different spaces, the information's useful, but I can't put two and two together. Once I know what the team can do, and I know what the capacity of the team is, I can take those two things together, and I can take the priority from the organization, and it might be that I can do absolutely everything. Some organizations can. I would argue that there's not enough demand if that's the case, but usually there's a level of juggling that's required. And I go back to my multicolored diagram at the beginning. It's a little bit of a Tetris game to slot these things in to give people acceptable delivery timescales. Rather than deliver everything in 9 months, we can deliver a couple of things in 3, 6 or 7 things in 6, and okay, there'll be a few that take the full 9 months. As long as we understand the priority, as long as we understand capacity, we can make that happen. Ultimately, the game here is, how is this process managed? Have I got boards and terms of reference for those boards that allow this to come through? If I'm working in a smaller organization, does the PMO have the authority to proceed with things? Who do I need to involve in terms of senior management? If I've got small teams, who do I need to involve? Who makes the decisions on money? Who makes the decisions on priority? Who makes the decisions on what comes first, second, or third? If I know those things, I can put in place meetings, boards, whatever you want to call them, that will mean that on a regular basis we can review the portfolio, and we can put in place corrective actions if we need to. So that's kind of plan it, understand what you're going to do. What does that mean in terms of changes? Well, as you'd expect, I would suggest you need to create a common front door. There can be multiple routes, but it needs to be controlled and understood by the delivery organization. So a common front door and pipeline process that gets me to the point that I know which projects I'm doing and in what order. Agree levels of delegated authority. This is a term I haven't used so far. Ultimately, what you're after here is, it may be that I'm delivering very small pieces of work, and it might be that the team leads can take that upon themselves. It might be that I'm delivering large programs, in which case I might need the authority of more senior people. If we agree delegated authorities through the organization, we can make the approval process as efficient as we're allowed to. We can push stuff through the approval process, small stuff, low risk stuff, repetitive stuff. We can push that through without too much difficulty. The bigger, more risky, more complex projects, as you go up, you're going to need more authority to push those through. But though the people that make those decisions don't need to be tied down to the nif-naf and trivia that the other pieces would require. So you don't need people to look at everything depending on their seniority. You need to get a delegated level of authority so that people understand what they're allowed to push through the process. Sounds obvious, this one, but you'd be amazed how poorly it's usually done. Document the process and the governance method. I draw out process and governance as separate things. There's a process flow that you go through, that different people have to do different tasks at different times. The governance takes the delegated level of authority and it puts in place the drumbeat, I call it, I need to do this by this date, I need to do this by this date, I need to do this by this date to get authority to proceed. So if you put in place the flow and you put in place the drumbeat, everyone will know when and what needs to happen. Okay. Define your teams and understand their capacity. We talked about understanding those teams. But you know what? I work with organizations. I'm working with an organization now where when we looked at the teams, it looked as though that organization had bags of capacity, tons of capacity to do stuff. Once we started to delve into it, it turned out that large numbers of people and whole teams in some cases were completely allocated to keeping the lights on, keeping the systems up and running, doing the security patches, getting stuff done to keep those lights on. They had no capacity for change. There was 10, 15 people in a team, but they were all tied up with keeping stuff going, and there was no capacity for change. In the same organization, that varied from 20 or 30% from no availability through 20 or 30% available to as much as 60 or 70%. But you've got to understand where those other demands are coming from, and at the very least draw a line across people that says, I've got this amount of a person to work on projects or work on change. Once you've got your documented process and governance, your teams defined and understanding their capacity, you've got those delegated levels of authority, and you've got a common front door process, you need to implement that agreed model. You know what? That's the hard bit. I can sit down with any organization and I can write those first 4 things within weeks or months, depending on the size of their model. Writing those things are not complicated, and you can pick them off the shelf. There's various books in the world that will allow you to pick those things off the shelf and run with them. They won't necessarily meet your specific needs, but they're there. The hard bit is actually looking at your business and actually working out how you're going to put change in place. Do a change assessment, work out what the organizational readiness for change is. Are the senior stakeholders bought in? Are they going to back you to the hilt? Is there a culture of failed change, or is there a culture of change stagnation? Yeah, or is there a culture of, yes, we love to change? Those are rare, but they do happen. How do I, what kind of risk have we got to the change? Is it risky because it's technically complicated? Is it risky because there's reputational damage possible if we get it wrong? What's the level? What's the cost? What's the risk profile? If we can assess those things, we can then put together a detailed change plan. Now, I tend to work with an organised delivery model. I'm a prototype practitioner. I work with the ADKAR process to put change in place, adoption change and business change in place, where essentially what you're doing is you're saying we need to make people aware, we need to give them the desire to change, we need to make sure they've got the knowledge they need, and ultimately we've just got to make sure that we can get that change through. But that change doesn't happen at an organizational level. That change happens person by person. So you've got to carry absolutely everyone through on that journey of change. Some people will resist, some people will dig in their heels, Some people will go along because they can see the benefits. Other people will need persuading. They'll go with you as to some extent, but they'll expect you to make their change as smooth as possible. So you need to make sure they know that why they're changing and how good that green field's going to be when we get there. You need to make sure that there are no impediments to that change, that they have the knowledge that they can do this. You need to take away retreat routes. You need to take away old ways of doing things. To the extent if they've got an old system, you take away the old system. You shut it down as quickly as you can. You don't want them to be able to take a backward step. And then ultimately, you've got to review people's movement. Sorry, that sounds like there's a delivery coming to my door. Dangers of being at home. You've got to make sure that people are reinforced, that we look at these things, we monitor the rollout, we make sure that each person's moving. And if there's a stakeholder, particularly a key stakeholder, that's digging heels in and not moving, we've got to focus effort on those stakeholders. We've got to carry everyone on that journey through that change and make it happen. Okay. What does CPS do in this space? Just as a tagline before we get to questions. We've been doing for 25 years now, we've been working as an organization to deliver portfolio program and project services. The quotes and the knowledge that I'm talking about here has come from hard experience rather than picked up out of reading the book. We do deliver best-in-class portfolio and program services and systems, but the purpose of today is for you to reflect on where you are now and how you can make that change happen. Questions? So I've got a question here on how we actually deal, an example of how we deal with difficult stakeholders. I think I'm interpreting that correctly. Essentially, what we try and do is we put together a stakeholder map that gives us a hierarchical view of the organization that we're addressing, and we try and focus on key stakeholders that need to be moved from a resistant or ambivalent position into a supporting position. There'll be lots of people that are green and going along with you, and as you move through that hierarchy, you're looking to get more and more green. But what we do is with key people that are digging their heels in, you will often lose a whole branch of the hierarchy underneath of that person. So if that's a senior person and a key stakeholder, you could lose quite a lot of people just by them saying, "Nah, don't engage with that, it's not worth it." So we'll take those nodes, those people at those top nodes on board, and we'll work through with them everything we can. Sometimes those people are difficult. Sometimes those people are not available to us. Sometimes you have to really work hard at just one individual to unlock a whole hierarchy of people below. So you need to look at that, and you need to address that person, and you can unlock quite a few other people along the way. So I've got another question here. Clearly PPM has a lot to offer the organisation. So why do you think there can be so much resistance from your experience? Yeah, it's a very good question. The reality is, I like to think that there are different people in the world. There are people that embrace change and like to have new things happen. There are people that like to do things the way they always have. And actually, most people are somewhere in between. If you give them a really good understanding of how things will be better in the future by doing what they're doing, how their lives will improve. I know that's a grandiose statement, but it's a statement nonetheless. If you can explain to people what's in it for them, and again, another cliche, they will come along with you, mostly. Then you've got the odd person who just doesn't get it, who maybe is a very free thinker, who doesn't like following rules and regulations. I like to think that, I used the phrase before, I like to give people guidance, not rules. So if we put PPM across to an organization as these are rules and standards that you've got to follow regardless, yeah, there'll be people whose backs go up at that. If we can sell it as we are helping you deliver efficient and effective projects, and oh look, your team's overworked, why do you think that is? Maybe we can put together something that will mean that only the relevant amount of work or the priority work is coming through at any given time. Oh look, your projects never have enough resource, Mrs. Program, Mr. Program Manager. What if we put in, by doing what we're doing, we are actually going to make that a lot easier for you to engage with the organization. If that can be done, and you know, there's an if in there, it's not always possible, but it, you know, there are ways and means, then you can sell it. You can get those people on board. It is, at the end of the day, this is about communication. It's about effective communication, and it's about keeping people with the desire to change. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? So I've got any guidance for prioritizing between projects across different business units where projects are delivered by a central team. So I'm working with an organization at the moment that has competing needs for delivery teams. They have completely different business drivers. They have they all work for one organization, but outside of that, they're really working in their own sectors and have very little investment in the other parts of the organization. And they're all going to a central IT function to get services delivered. That central IT function struggles to manage. So what we've done there, and it's something that's still a work in progress, but we've done in other places and has worked in those. We've got the individual areas to set up and run their own internal priority groups. So they take the things they want done and they agree their own priority order to get their list of what they want done first or urgently. They then take that together to an organizational wide portfolio priority group, and they sit down together with that group and agree a common priority. So it's a bit of horse trading. They kind of play a little bit of poker in their own heads. They say which ones they really need, and they trade off the ones that they maybe don't need, and they get an agreement among themselves that this is the overall scheme priority. Now, it might be that actually we can deliver all of those and everyone's happy, but the scheme goes forward for into the prioritization process, approval process, and is fed into a capacity model to say, look, based on that priority, we can do these projects by then, these projects by then, these projects by a bit later. Because the process is visible and everyone's engaged all the way through, and that they can all buy into the process that's gone before. Like I say, the one I'm working with now is a work in progress, but it's showing good signs. Ones I've worked with before, they even meet people that they've never met before and go, oh, so that's so-and-so that has been stealing all my resources. That's who so-and-so has been. And they actually they band together to come up with a common way of dealing with the central service. We end up with a very good outcome. Hope that fits. So one more. What method software do you use to ensure client users have visibility of project progress? So we use a suite of different things. We tend to try, historically I would have answered very much maybe Project Online, Project to give an overall portfolio view. These days there are a number of tools. Working in areas that are maybe software focused, agile delivery is becoming very popular, even not software focused. Agile delivery is becoming very common, and we're using DevOps or Jira or things like that to put together sprints or Kanban boards to run projects through. What we try to do in parallel to that is keep project objectives, project deliverables, and maybe resource profiles in either Project for the Web or some similar tool set, or Project Online still, to give us a view of key outcomes and maybe textual context around how projects are progressing, and then tie that into DevOps or Jira to give us a clear view of how the tasking is progressing. Where organizations are not working on agile methods, from the front door of the process to the benefit delivery, you've got to have some control over all of it, and that might be you might use something like ServiceNow to pick up requests, or even just forms or Power Apps to pick up requests. Pushing it through into prioritization tools, and then underpinning everything, maybe with a data model and a common reporting tool, such as Power BI or something like that. If you put the processes and methods in place, if you like, really what you're trying to do there is just make sure that you've got that common understanding of the data model so that you can produce the relevant management information. Just checking to see if I've covered all the questions. I think I've gone through all the questions now. I apologize if I missed one. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it at the moment. Any last questions before we finish? Sorry, one last one for those that were just hanging on to the end. Can you please repeat what was the agreed levels of delegated authority in the change delivery organisation slide? So delegated authority, there's no fixed level of delegated authority. We tend to, we need to look at what the company's willing to talk about. So it might be that you just have a delegated authority based on costs. It might be that you talk to them about risk, cost, resources. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get as much of the small, insignificant, low-risk stuff through with the minimum amount of hierarchy involved. You're then looking at only going up that hierarchy if you absolutely have to. And that might be, like I say, in a small organisation, it might be a few £100,000. In a large infrastructure organisation, it could be millions. The sizing can change. One last question come in, I've just seen at the bottom there. How can I persuade my senior management to access real-time status rather than rely on weekly PDFs and report approach? I worked with a brigadier in the army some years ago now, and he was adamant he had to have paper. He had a paper pack. The pack was 2 inches thick. He insisted that he needed that because he had to sit and he had to go through each of those pieces of paper before the meeting so that he could prepare for that meeting. I spent quite a lot of time egging him on to look at his PC. It wasn't something he was fond of doing, but in the end, I got him a tab. He quite liked the idea at the time of an iPad. I got him an iPad that he could sit in bed at night or wherever he wanted to sit, and he could scroll through the MI online. And he very quickly got used to the idea of exception reporting. He spent quite a bit of time going through drilling in, but ultimately he started to trust what he saw on the dashboards, and he started to sit in an ops meeting with the screen on the board, with the MI on the board, and he points at it and say, what about that one? What about that one? What about that one? And we moved them over to an exception reporting real-time status by stealth. He could look at it every evening on his iPad. The meeting still took place. By the time they got there, everybody was aware of the information that they were going to be looking at. And that actually, to my knowledge, that the systems have changed, but that process still goes on. And said brigadier is now a 2-star general, and he still does the same thing to his brigadiers and his colonels below him. Hopefully that's given you a reasonable view. I'm aware that we are right on the time for the session. I really hope it's given you something to think about, and think through those questions. Think through what what outcome you're looking for. Think through those spiral diagrams in the terms of how I would go about doing this, and hopefully you can make some sense out of what is admittedly a very complicated set of processes. Thank you very much, everybody.